Hello and welcome to another episode of Top Deck, the series where we take a look at some of the leading TCG deck lists. So this time we have what will probably be the last deck list that I received from the Poole Regional over last weekend. This time we have second place and it's Zavi Ebbutt's 60 card Light Swarm build. So really interesting point just want to make before we get into this. Zavi actually borrowed the deck on the morning of the event, so it's not his own deck. It was actually supplied to him, built by Danny Stockton, who I believe also supplied it. Originally he was going to play Sky Scourge and basically meme his way to victory, but instead went for the 60 card deck and secured second place with it. So let's get into the deck list as per usual. I'm going to run through the list, the rounds, the side strategy, and I pinged some questions over to Zavi. He's not coming on for an interview, but we do have the answers to those questions, and of course if you just want the deck list, head down into the description and pick it up from there. So looking at the deck list, we have triple Ash Blossom, triple Ghost Ogre, a triple Lone Fire, and one Cobra, triple Scorpio, one Bulb in here, one Damage Juggler, one Hat Tricker instead of two, bit unusual, so we'll ask about that, one Trick Clown, one Garnet, one Thousand Blades, like basically all of your combo-y bits here. The one Goblinberg is the extra target for Invoker, triple Mizuki, triple Solitaire, one Spirit Master, one Gozuki, double Unizombie, then two Raiden, two Wolf, triple Snow of course. For the dinos, one Ultimate Conductor, double Coatless, one Rex, and then triple Brilliant Fusion, double Charge of the Light Brigade, so we've sort of got a 2, 2, and 2 here for the Light Swarm stuff. Then 3 Lifetime Offering, 1 Grass, 1 Soul Charge, 1 Monster Reborn, 2 Double Evolution Pill, 1 Foolish, 1 Rotor, 2 Gold Sock, and 2 Desires instead of the typical 3. Then for the extra, it's mostly the combo stuff in here. So the 1 Seraphonite, Invoker, Minerva, Tornado, Amaterasu. Then the Utopia engine. So it does take up the 2 slots, but it's really useful for dealing with a lot of problems. Then the 1 Mrs. Radiant. Then a Decode in here, we don't always see this. And 1 Curious, 1 Borrowload, 1 Sayuja. Then a Nat Beast in here to go with the Glow Up Bulb, a Black Rose, and a single copy of Omega. So yeah, that's the deck itself. A few interesting points in here, because obviously, you know, you've got the Spicy Bulb, and the only one Hat Tricker, and the Dino engine of course, and obviously the reduced Light Swarm engine. So what we'll do is I'll run through the rounds from the event now. So round 1, 60 card mirror. Zavi goes 2-1 in this round. He loses the dice roll. Notable moments from the game: his opponent cut him into Garnet in games 1 and 2, but he lost game 2 to an established board with Snow. Game 3, he thought he played 2 Rex because he'd never really looked at the deck properly. So he Gold Socked, went to banish the Rex to summon a Nat Beast with the Glow Up Bulb engraved, but because he didn't have it, obviously, he went to banish the Ash instead. Summoned the Snow from grave by banishing Spirit and Solitaire to make Amaterasu, then obviously used the effect to bring back Mizuki for the summon, and made Nat Beast that way instead, to end with Sayuja, Nat Beast, Minerva, Overtex, Amaterasu, adding back the Ash, and then obviously Snow engraved. So really impressive board to end on there from that situation. It's pretty cool. Round 2 against Paleo Frogs, he went 2-0, lost the dice roll again. Notable moments: he bricked game 2 but managed to make Lightning to beat over a set dupe Frog, and sat on Lightning protecting it with Snow until he drew into a way of getting Pill with Rex in the grave, which is cool. Round 3 against True Draco Demise went 2-0, lost the dice roll again. In game 1 he ashed his opponent's Demise, and in turn 1, in Zavi's turn 1, he used Erupt in the his opponent used Erupt in the standby phase. So Zavi obviously used Gold Sock to send the Spirit Master and pop it. Ended up making a Tornado to start baiting the set cards and clear the diagram to stop his opponent from doing anything serious. And in game 2, his opponent opens pretty well, but Zavi even leaves after his opponent's demise, which is basically game, and then an Overtext pretty much seals the deal. Round 4, another True Draco Demise, this time against Tim Cox. He lost the dice roll again. Game 1, he plays through an established board by summoning Tornado to bait effects and pop back row. resolves a left arm for grass, so going really hard on this time one. Resolves grass, leaving him with 15 cards left in the deck. Sorry, this is in game 1, not in turn 1. He makes a black rose and establishes a strong board with access to 3 snows and hand traps, which is pretty much the best thing you can possibly do against True Draco after wiping out all their resources. Game 2, his opponent opens Iron Wall and Anti-Spell, whereas Zavi opens Left Arm, Double Evo Pill, and Charge of the Light Brigade, so pretty much nothing going there. Game 3, Zavi resolved Left Arm again, and won basically by getting through a grass. Round 5 against ABC, this is his loss to ABC going 0-2. He won the dice roll. Notable moments, game 1, his only starter card was Solitaire, if you can really call that a starter card. So he makes Minerva off the zombie play, which then gets Valent, which is always fun. His opponent opens really well, and manages to flip an Imperial Order on Zavi's draw phase. So the 3 spells that he then draws for the next 3 turns in a row are doing basically nothing, and he loses from that. Game 2, his only opener is Solitaire again, so he goes for the same play and it this time gets hit by an Ash. His opponent opens Skill Drain and Union Hanger with a Silver Gadget, so that's going to be pretty grindy. They grind until Zavi makes a Black Rose, which clears, which is banished for Snow's cost, so that it can resolve the effect to clear the Skill Drain. But then he only has 1 Snow activation left, where they're both just basically top decking, and this is in time at this point. His opponent draws a Union Hanger for turn, summons his last piece for Buster, and obviously Zavi has to then force out the Snow, and makes Lightning to beat over his opponent's other monsters to do as much damage as possible. So his opponent flips a Judgment on the Lightning, and that's pretty much it. So his opponent top decks a Reborn and takes the game from him. Round 6 against Invoked Kaiju Hand Traps. This time Zavi goes 2-1, winning the dice roll. Some notable moments. Game 1, his opponent opens Ash and Ogre. Zavi makes Minerva, which gets Ashed, and then Curious, which gets Ogred. So he sends a Glow Up Bulb, adds back a Soul Charge, which is always nice. Makes Saija, and then Soul Charge back the grave to get a really, the typical insane first turn board. Game 2, Zavi still hasn't seen a card other than a Hand Trap from his opponent, so he assumes that it's invoked and decides to go first. Decide to go first and second, that's what it says here. He ended up going first, established a perfect board with 14 cards left in deck, but never saw a Snow. His opponent summons Purgatrio and attacks the board for game. Pretty much it. Game 3, Zavi opens Scorpio, Cobra, Gold Sock, Garnet, Double Evo Pill. That's horrible. So he Gold Sarks for Rex and normals the Garnet to make Minerva. Minerva gets Gamut, but the 3 mills are Mizuki, Solitaire, and Damage Juggler. The 3 mills that he gets off it being destroyed. He uses Pill to summon Tyranno, which gets Kaiju'd, and he makes Lightning to beat over his opponent's fusion, leaving him with only an Alistair in hand in time. So snowing Zavi's own Lightning off the board to clear to make an Omega, then takes away his opponent's Alistair, and that will be it. Round 7 against 60 card Lightsworn. So this is a 2-1 record against JY. He lost the dice roll here. Game 1, JY opens up a really good board, which he can't break because Snow is a thing. Game 2, Zavi opens up Dimensional Barrier, Nat Beast, Ash, and Omega, which is really nice. JY uses Grass, which Zavi tries to negate. JY reveals Gamma, and Zavi ashes the Gamma. And JY then can't establish a board, so pretty much just scoops that game. Going into game 3, they play a really grindy game into time, and it's pretty much Ultimate Conductor with Snow and a zombie, and the zombie engine that allows Zavi to push for the game with that, after a Call by the Grave prevents JY's Snow, so that's really cool to see. So that's it. So we ended up going 6-1 from the event from the rounds. Really cool comments from the event. Looks like there are a lot of interesting interactions that you managed to get, and being able to sort of push through very subpar hands as well is quite cool. So that's the rounds done. Let's quickly cover the side deck strategy which Zavi went with. So you can see the side deck strategies, they'll be coming up on screen now. So we'll start off with True Draco. And what you'll notice from every single one of these different siding choices is that the light spawn cards are always the ones to be taken out for other cards that are potentially, more optimal within the matchup, which is basically suggestive that the light spawns maybe aren't such a starter engine for this deck. They sort of just extend you into a position where you have more advantage. So if instead you could side in different cards which would take stuff away from your opponent and potentially give you that advantage instead, that's the option that you sort of go for. So for True Draco, obviously you want the back row removal from the Twin Twisters, and then when you're going second, the Kaiju, so that you can take out a masterpiece that's on field, because sometimes that can be a bit of an issue. Then for Pendulum Magician, we'll see Dimensional Barrier coming in when you're going first, obviously because it locks your opponent out for a turn, and a turn is generally enough for you to establish something good enough to take the game with when you're playing something like 60 card. Whereas when you're going second, Zavi was putting in the Doggerans and the Evenly Matched, so basically anticipating that any Pendulum opponent would be playing into a position where they put too much on the field, and then you're going to have to take that away from them with the Evenly, and you obviously need to get rid of any vortexes or anything that you can't bait with a snow by playing the Kaiju in there. For going against Mech Knight Invoked, which we've seen come up a lot recently, when you're going first, he's putting in Called by the Grave, which is an interesting option because, well, first of all, you need it for all of the hand traps that your opponent's going to have. But I believe that Luke Bennett and James Lloyd also mentioned in their deck profile for their own Mech Knight Invoked deck was you would often end up in a situation where sometimes you would put your Alistair in the grave with the Spellbook engine. And it makes for a really interesting interaction when you have a Call by the Grave available. You haven't had to use it on a hand trap, and so you can sort of get to a position where if your opponent has used the Spellbook engine, then you end up banishing their Alistair so they can't resolve that fusion by banishing from grave. So that's kind of it's a very niche situation, but it does come up and it's quite interesting and well worth noting there. Then obviously Dimensional Barrier, Core Fusion takes away everything, and Light Spawn's coming out for those cards. Then when you're going second against Mech Knight Invoked, this never came up for Zavi. You would be putting in 3 copies of Doggeran to get rid of basically the Macabre that they're going to have on the field, or sometimes they even have a Harbinger, and then also 3 Call by the Grave because hand traps are still really crucial for the deck. When going against 60 cards, for going first, Zavi would put in 3 Call by the Grave and 3 Dimensional Barrier. So Call by the Grave is absolutely crucial for taking away combo pieces and snows, mainly snows, but then sometimes, you do get into that position where you have to get rid of something that's going to lead to your opponent having an impressive board, and then Dimensional Barrier giving you that extra turn in order to deal with your opponent. But in this case, we're not having Light Swan cards taken out of the deck because you essentially, when you're going first, you want as many ways to start your engine as possible in the mirror match, so the Light Swans stay in. Whereas the Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbits come out, these are significantly worse because they don't really deal with Minerva or Curious in any way that's relevant. See the Desires come out, which in a sense makes the deck more consistent because you don't banish your combo pieces, so you're still able to work with them. And we see Grass come out as well, because obviously at this stage you've both got 60 cards, so you're not going to resolve Grass for anything reasonable until your opponent has managed to combo off. When you're going second, he would put in the Doggerans, the Call by the Grave, and the Evenly Matched. So Evenly Matched is certainly something where you're anticipating your opponent establishing a significant board that you want to deal with. Call by the Grave is to bait snow pretty much, and the Doggeran, the Mad-Playing Kaiju, is to deal with anything that's too impressive that your opponent can do, because sometimes they will set up things like what's it called? I just completely lost it now. Sometimes they'll set up things like Nat Beast, which you really need to be able to deal with because there's too many spells in the deck which you need to resolve. So having the option of like a Doggeran is pretty nice. And then again, siding out the Light Spawns and things, because you want stuff that's going to blow out your opponent, whereas getting that extra 2 or 3 mils doesn't always guarantee, getting yourself into a better position than them. So as per usual, when I see a list come onto top deck, there are questions that I need to ask to the pilot, and also I've tried to sort of get some communication through to the deck builder as well via Zavi. So the first thing I wanted to ask about is he's playing more hand traps than we typically see for a 60 card deck. A lot of the ones we've seen recently just play the triple ash because it has the most synergy with the deck, as JY will comment on. It's the one that works the best with everything in the deck. But he wanted to play the triple Ghost Ogre. Zavi wants to play the triple Ghost Ogre because you don't really mind opening the hand traps to deal with all of the top meta decks that are out at the moment. Milling them is pretty useful because of the Amaterasu play, where you banish them and then add them back. And one of the interesting things is because Ash is able to, Ghost Ogre is able to activate on the field, you can do things like summoning the Ghost Ogre with the Amaterasu, and then adding back an Ash if you have both available, and you banish them both for your snow, and that way you basically get 2 disrupts off your single Amaterasu, plus you'll obviously be setting up your snow as well, so that's really cool to see. Then there's the Bulb in the main, which is pretty cool. So that gives you the Nat Beast access. No attrition here, but Nat Beast tends to be enough. So Zavi says, Glow Bulb, in his opinion, is an essential card. It opens up the option to Nat Beast, but also serves as a free summon when milled, and is summonable off of Lone Fire, so that you can banish Lone Fires off Pill to summon Dino. Then also Amaterasu to bring back... and then Amaterasu to bring back Lone Fire and summon Bulb to link with, and use its effect in Grave, so that's really cool. Then there's only one hat trigger in the deck. In the earlier lists that we saw start to play Perform Mage, they would typically play 2 hat trigger, but Zavi and Danny, who's the deck builder, they decided to go with 1. It never really served as a problem in games, and in future he would ideally cut the full Light Swan engine entirely because it doesn't add enough to the deck, causing potential bricks, and that way you could fit in the second hat trigger, and that would be one of the first things to go into the deck. So then, yeah, obviously we've only got 2 of each of the Light Swan cards that are relevant for this deck. Zavi said that the Light Swan engine was only to fill up gaps of the deck, and although Charge is a great card, the targets really didn't do much to advance the game, unless you were luck sacking a wolf or something, so they will be cut completely in future versions of the build. Then the same thing again for Desires, because he's only playing 2 Desires. A lot of 60 card decks play 3. He says, although 60 cards used to love playing 3 Desires, having more copies than 2 now is really risky. 60 cards used to be centered around summoning Omega multiple times, but with the way that the deck has adapted, it's no longer the strongest play that it can make. So recovering the resources from your banish section that you would need, which you have banished with your Desires, means that you have to go out of your way to do really suboptimal plays and make those Omegas in weird ways. So he'd much rather draw the combo pieces in his starting hand than potentially ruin the combo and not be able to work with it properly. So he would never really want to resolve more than 1 Desires, so playing 2 is just about okay. As for the extra deck, we see a lot of different options come in and out of the extra deck for dealing with different problems, so I wanted to know if there were any other extra deck monsters that he would have liked to have had access to on the day, and any changes that he would have made for those. He said there was never a time that he felt he needed a monster that wasn't already in the extra deck. As much as Dweller is a great card, it's not essential, and the same thing happens with Baguska because it doesn't actually remove problems, so they only help you in niche scenarios, so it's better to just have the more broad selection. Then in the side we see obviously the triple Doggeran, which we've seen in the Stiding strategy. I mentioned that it's a little bit unusual because there's no Overraptor to search it with. However, it does obviously have that interaction with Double Evolution Pill. So I wanted to know if the Doggeran's put in enough work for them to be relevant, or if you'd rather play something else, like a weaker Kaiju to beat over or something. He said more times than he cares to admit, he was saved by bricking with a Pill and milling a Doggeran. If it's in hand, then it's great, but also in Grave it can be really valuable, more so than Sphere Mode, because obviously Sphere Mode doesn't make your Double Evo Pill live. Also in a 60 card list, playing any less than 3 of a side deck card is a really risky business because you won't be able to get to it. As for the hardest and easiest decks to take on when you're playing 60 card, Zavi said that Draco is probably the first deck that comes to mind when he thinks of difficult matchups, due to the back row being really difficult to play through, and there being limited outs to a Masterpiece. Other than that, another 60 card deck is probably the most difficult because of it having to be very aware of deck sizes, which is a serious issue, and you have to manage resources much better than your opponent in order to win, or get into a situation where you're able to generate more advantage than them through potentially like slightly better draws, that sort of thing. Pendulum can be really difficult on the opening board, and because of how many threats they present, and apparently ABC is difficult too, but this is almost exclusively due to the Floodgates, which is the same as the Draco matchups. As for the easiest matchup, Zavi says probably, Burning Abyss is quite an easy matchup. As for changes that he'd make to the list, or changes that Danny would make to the list following the event, other than removing the Lightsworn engine, as there were a lot of normal summons in the deck, no, there weren't really any changes that he'd like to make. Charge is a good card that adds bad cards. It's better to just play good cards in its place. Personally, so this is Zavi speaking, personally I used to like playing 2 Garnet to be able to make sure that you resolve the engine multiple times, but after only bricking with Garnet 2 times the entire day, he doesn't believe that this is needed anymore. As for shoutouts that Zavi wants to make, shoutouts to his driver and the Southampton TO, Wayne Abel, hashtag Team Nerdworld. And also shoutouts to Matt Winkle and Jason Watton, the head judge and tournament organizer of the event, for running a well-structured and smooth regional, even if the standings were fixed. So thanks very much, Zavi, for coming on. Congratulations on getting 2nd place. Really awesome variation on the 60 card deck, and great to get your reasoning behind all of it as well. Good luck in future events, and maybe we'll see you bring on a meme deck next time. It'd be great to see that Sky Scourge list make its way onto Top Deck. Thanks for watching this episode of Top Deck. If you have any comments or suggestions that you would like to make, leave them in the comment section down below. Check out the description for details of how you can get involved in this series. You can enter by voice interview, or instead you could just send all of your information over Facebook Messenger. Anything like that will be absolutely fine. If you want to see anything in particular from the upcoming series, then be sure to get in touch, and I'll see you guys in the next video.